We are live. Hi. Welcome to another episode of Comic Beat Insider, the quarantine film analysis and commentary podcast. I'm Heidi MacDonald. I am the editor-in-chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com.
And I'm Jimmy Aquino, the host, producer of the weekly podcast, Comic News Insider, covering comics, TV, film, and pop culture.
And I am Jon Hoche, New York actor and comic book fan and regular contributor to Comic News Insider.
Hey, and I am KB. This is actually my first time on the podcast, but I do regularly, contribute to The Beat. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I'm a host, and all-around fan of all things Watchmen.
Welcome, Kay. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you could finally join us. We've been actually trying to do this episode for a while, but time goes in circles. So actually, Kay was the first person who I trusted who said she really liked the Watchmen reboot on HBO, and I was like, really? Because
yes, Watchmen.
Yeah, well, I am, I'm an Alan Moore stan. So, and I haven't necessarily been a fan of some of the comics things that have been done with it. But I have to say, and I'm also Damon Lindelof, big question. You had a lot to prove, Damon. But you know
he's
what?
Got a good track record.
Yeah, but you know what? Against all odds, the Watchmen HBO series turned out to be groundbreaking and, nominated for more than 20 Emmy Awards and also way ahead of the curve on what's happening in the world, something that we've talked about here on the Zoomcast before. So we thought it'd be fun to rewatch the Watchmen and just talk about it. So when we start this out, we talk about our first experiences with the thing in question and go around. So I'll start out. Obviously, as the old timer, I read Watchmen as the comic book as it came out in monthly issues. In fact, I remember meeting Dave Gibbons and he was telling me, yes, Heidi, I'm working on a new series with Alan, and it should.
I'm sorry, what accent is that?
Yeah, I know I can't do accents at all. But anyway, he was telling me about Watchmen before it came out. So and I was like, oh, this is cool, and reading it as it came out. And by the way, it didn't take 2 years for the last issue to come out. They came out monthly, except for the last issue, which was 1 month late. So anyway, but yeah. And so huge fan of it when it came out, groundbreaking comic. I liked the Snyder movie. I like Zack Snyder. I've talked about that before. I wish Paul Greengrass had done it. It would have been a million times better. But it is what it is. And of course, now the Watchmen TV show, as I watched it, I was like, holy shit, this is really great. So, yeah.
Yeah, same. Well, the comic series, I read years later, but I remember being in my hometown, Jacksonville, Florida, going to the Ye Old Bookshop, which is where I got my comics. They had a small little comic book section. And I remember in a little, one of the long boxes, they had this whole collection of Watchmen, all 12 issues. And I asked the guy, I go, what is this? He goes, oh, it's a pretty good series. I don't know. It's all right. So I didn't pick it up. Had he been enthusiastic, oh, it's really great, you gotta pick it up, I didn't get it. And I was, I don't know, 18, 17, I don't know. And so then a few years later, of course, I started hearing about it. And I think I finally picked it up in the early 90s and read it. Was like, what? And I, like you, I liked the movie. Didn't love it. A little long. But it had potential, certainly. It could have been a great series of films had it, done better or had some changes to it. But when the series came out, I was super excited. And I saw it when it came out every week and loved it. And did a deep dive into all about it. And as we found, not only was it, apropos to today, it was also very educational for many of us. And I loved it.
Yeah, and I don't think I read it until I was in maybe my mid-teens to late teens. It was the same time about when around Vertigo happened, when Vertigo started publishing things, and I was like, oh, comics can be more than just superhero things. And I guess it was suggested to me, and kind of blew my mind because it kind of combined both worlds of superhero. It's the most adult superhero thing I had read at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the like Heidi. I like the Snyder movie, and I like Zack Snyder, and I especially like the like we're getting with Justice League, the Snyder cut of Watchmen. It adds only a few minutes, but they're very precious minutes that kind of make it a even more enjoyable movie. So I don't know, Jimmy, if you've seen that one or not.
I haven't. No.
It's even longer. So
Yeah, maybe that's the one that's in Hbmx now. Because when I looked at it, I said, "Oh, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes." Was it always? So maybe it wasn't always 2 hours and 45 minutes. So
Possibly,
maybe I need to watch. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I'll go back and watch it eventually.
And I am a little bit of the outlier here because I have never read the comics. So, growing up, I didn't really get into comics at that time. But when the film came out, I actually really, really liked the film. Like a lot more, I think, than I thought I would, because I kind of just went in there with like no backstory, no knowledge or anything. But I thought it was really, really good. So I didn't have any problems with it, except for like Jimmy, the length. Like it actually was exceptionally long. Like I feel like it was almost 4 hours. And I was like, whoo, like I remember being in the theater like, okay, guys, like this is really entertaining, but like also I'm trying not to leave to take a bathroom break, but like also this is really long. But yeah, it was really, really good. So when they announced that they were doing the series, so I may also be a little bit of an outlier here because I've only seen like a handful of Lost episodes. And the reason why is because people were so pissed about that ending. I was like, why do I want to invest in this? So I didn't really invest in the Lost episodes until after. So when I found out that Damon was doing Watchmen, I was like, ooh, I hope he's going to give Watchmen a good ending because people are still pissed years later about what happened on Lost. So that was one of my concerns. And then my second concern when I found out that it would really tackle racism and be centering around a Black woman was, how is a white man going to tackle this in a way that actually is going to work out? So when HBO was like, hey, are you interested in doing the junket? I was like, absolutely. And they sent the first like 3 episodes. And I told Heidi like immediately after I'd seen like the first 3 episodes, I was like, this is so good. Like it was way better than I could have ever imagined. And I didn't think it was going to be bad, but it like exceeded my expectations. I mean, the pilot is just so extraordinary. And I actually, because I watch a ton of TV content, I actually, for me, Watchmen may be a perfect show, like in my opinion.
Yeah,
I will never say that. Like I'm always like, nah, okay, like but Watchmen from top to bottom, and even with its like multi-arc storylines is still exceptional to me.
Yeah. So let me just be kind, rewind. You didn't like the Lost ending?
Well, I
liked it.
Okay.
Anyway.
For me, like all of my friends who were obsessed with it were like, what happened? I can't believe I invested all this time and this is the ending. So I hadn't seen an episode prior to that because I also kind of love when like series end so then I can just binge them and watch them in full and I don't have to keep up with them. And I kind of did a similar thing with Game of Thrones, except I started like 3 weeks before the last season aired and I was like, this is what I'm going to do and get there. And then obviously that ending was wildly disappointing as well. So here we are. But with Lost, yeah, I was just kind of like, oh, I guess. Okay. But yeah, my friends were like, pissed. I mean, they still are, honestly.
I didn't love it, but I did like it. And I think when Michael Emerson came on, we talked about it a few times, and he explained his thoughts of it. It made a lot more sense to me. I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of get that. I see that now, the whole purgatory thing and sort of leaving it a little ambiguous. I didn't mind that either, which we will get into with Watchmen as well.
I think, though, I think with the Lost, I mean, I was watching Lost from the first episode, when it aired, because anyway, I have a lot of weird things about TV because I'm so old. I like to watch it when it's on. Now I will watch things rerun, but
I still watch stuff like that. Yeah.
Excited when it's on. I like that immediacy. But anyway, stuck with Lost the whole way through. There was. I know everyone blamed Damon Lindelof for it. I mean, they painted themselves into a corner. So the one that I really blame him for is Prometheus. Oh, I hate that movie. Oh my God. Oh, I hate that movie. It's like everything bad about Lost and in one little package. So
man. I didn't hate Prometheus.
I didn't see it.
I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kay. I don't remember hating it, but it looked
Right,
really good.
Yeah, I like.
Yeah. The trailers look great. I never saw it though.
Yeah, but
I feel like either way, he's redeemed himself now with Watchmen, like
Oh,
giving
yeah.
himself a perfect series. And I had not seen The Leftovers. I actually just started it last week. So
what are you thinking of it?
Like,
what do you think of it? Leftovers.
I just watched the pilot. Okay. So it's an interesting concept. I'm like, okay, but I mean, everyone basically was like, oh, if you love Watchmen, you should watch The Leftovers now. So I'm checking it out.
Yeah, I feel I need to go back because I remember watching the first few episodes and I was like, I'm not feeling it, but maybe I should go back. I love Lindelof because during Lost, you kind of get to know him. He's always appeared. They had Lost podcast he did, official ones. You kind of get to know his personality, and through watching Lost, you sort of watched his style grow and develop to the point where he honed it really greatly. What I think is great about Watchmen is that he talks about, and I'm sure Heidi, you saw a lot of these interviews, about how it all came together. He was approached apparently 3 times to do this. And the third time he finally said yes. And during that time, he had sort of discovered things like he read Ta-Nehisi Coates' some of his work and learned about Tulsa 21, the Tulsa Massacre. But then when he was putting together the writing room, he did something very smart. This is something one of the writers, Cord Jefferson, talks about. Cord said in a Vulture interview, he talked about, he goes, well, half the writers, it was half black and half female, with like a sprinkle of white people. Well, he said there was Cord, Stacy, Crystal, Ryan, Brandon, Janine, and they were all black. And then there were 7 white people, he said, but only 4 of them were men. So Damon, he said Damon insisted on this diversity. He was like, we had to have a lot of black voices, a lot of female voices in there, and which I think is what made this series so great.
Yeah, I think, Damon also mentioned, like when we were doing the roundtables, he actually mentioned that he spent a lot of time talking to Regina King and talking to Yaya and talking to Lou about their own personal like family histories, because he wanted to kind of make sure and kind of incorporate certain things from their actual lives into the series. And things that like their families had experienced, because he didn't have that kind of breadth of knowledge, which I actually really appreciated. So even apart from reading a lot of Ta-Nehisi Coates and doing kind of background research and having those people in the writer's room, I thought it was really interesting because I've never actually heard of a showrunner like taking the time to spend time with the actors and ask about their families in an attempt to kind of incorporate that into the series as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, as an actor, that's a dream come true if you can get that opportunity.
Yeah. Where they show interest in you besides your pretty face, John. I know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit though about, Kay, when you first saw those 3 episodes, let's just talk about, watching the show and just some of our thoughts about how it was dealing, and obviously, making racism the central issue of the show, but but how also it related to some of the themes of the original Watchmen. I know, Kay, you've seen the movie, but anyway, let's talk about just how it was, some of the things that struck us about that pilot.
Well, for me, I think for him tackling the Tulsa riots immediately, like really in the very first episode, because I had read that it was going to be incorporated in some way, but I didn't realize that he was going to lead right out of the gate. And I thought that was extraordinary. So for me, I already had a breadth of knowledge about the Tulsa riots. I mean, just because my parents had talked about it, like I understood what happened there from a very early age, because those are just the conversations that we had growing up. But I loved that he tied in a superhero character who was like birthed out of those riots, essentially. And so I was like, dang, that's really extraordinary. And then when you finally like see it full circle and see how that particular superhero is connected to Sister Night, like I don't know. I feel like in the first 3 episodes, he laid a foundation. And when we got to episode 9, which I also thought it was really weird that they only had 9 episodes, like it's just an odd number. But and so
there's a reason for that. Yes.
9, I loved that every loose end had been tied up, but he still allowed space for something to potentially come later. Me personally, I don't want anything to come later, but that's just me. But yeah, I feel like the pilot was just centering on that Black family, just really being able to dive into the struggles that were happening in those riots, but then create a backstory for that particular little boy and how he grows up and how race and racism truly shape his entire life, even to the end. Yeah, I thought it was extraordinary.
Yeah, I think for most people that aren't Black, that is, it was very educational. Like I feel like when I started watching, I feel like I've read or something like that, but I honestly, maybe I don't think I had. So it was very educational for me. And like you said, very powerful out the gate to come swinging with that. And you're like, oh my God. And of course, I think Google said it had the most hits for looking up, is this real? Like that. And we're like, yeah, it's real. And just touch your point about the 9 episodes thing. Damon had said originally 10 were planned. But he felt when they got around the 5th episode, writing it, after they finished it, he felt they were closer to the ending than in the middle.
Oh.
So he decided on 9 because he didn't just want to have a filler episode. The omitted episode would have likely covered more of Lady True's backstory, which I would have liked to see. But according to Lindelof, he said it definitely, he just felt like it was closer to the ending, and he didn't want to feel like he had to put in a filler episode. So that's the reason why there's 9. But yes,
I actually appreciate that. As an experienced showrunner, to know when not to have. I wish they would do that on the CW. On these episodes for these superhero
several shows. Yeah. But yes, very powerful opening. Like you were in right away. The first 5 minutes, you're glued to the TV, and it's just like powerful images and like, oh my God, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, embarrassingly, like I'm one of those people who was completely unaware of what was what happened in Tulsa, and because I knew ahead of time that the Watchmen takes place in kind of an alternate timeline as far as the original content goes, I was like, oh, this is terrible, but this didn't really happen because it's an alternate timeline. And then I was one of those people who instantaneously, like maybe even while the show was going on, was Googling like what happened, and I was devastated to like just learn about this. And I'm glad that I know, and obviously it's thankfully coming up more and more in public awareness, and I think it's also one of the reasons is because of this show and because so many people watched it. So yeah, I embarrassingly am one of those people who was completely unaware that Tulsa even happened.
Listen, Damon actually said that was his goal, though. Like when we had our interviews, he said his goal was for, like, he wanted to, because we had our interviews prior to the premiere. He said he wanted people to look it up. Like that was his goal, because he knew so many people were like himself had no idea until he started kind of, thinking about this project and working on it. So. Well,
that's what we learned, like from obviously history is written by the winners, like that, and us growing up, and like just a small example. John and I are Filipino, and I'm old enough where I grew up when the Philippines was having the regime change, where the dictator was finally being kicked out, and my namesake, Corazon Aquino, probably she was running for president, and I learned so much about the Philippines and our whole history there that was not in our history books, and that's when I first started noticing. Oh, we don't learn everything, do we? And so I was like, wait a minute, that's weird. I was like probably 16, 15, whatever like that. That's weird. Why are we not? And I remember my history teacher, who was lovely, and teacher goes, well, they only fit in a certain amount of history, and it's a certain type of class, whatever, blah, blah, American history. And I was like, okay, but I guess I get it, but wish we knew more, like that. So it just sucks that so much of our history is not taught to us.
Yeah. I mean, I was vaguely aware of it just because I read a lot of things and it goes into my head. But, obviously it was, I knew it was real as I was watching it, but I was like, this is incredible. It's incredible just to be confronting people with this. And, obviously history is, if you don't remember it, you're doomed to repeat it. And of course, the heart and soul of this show is Regina Spektor. And wow,
Regina King,
Regina King. Yeah, sorry about that. It's like, the brain doesn't always work. But anyway, Regina King. And just her character and, centering on
Incredible.
her. But I mean, there were so many other great things. I mean, after it has this just, gobsmacking, just stop you dead in your tracks opening of realization, then it's like all these other tendrils that spin out of it. And,
Tendrils, nice.
yes, that she has this, that she has a mixed race family, and which is actually super common in America, and her role, of course, with the police. I mean, it's so interesting that when this show started, we were at one place in dealing with all these things. I think, obviously systemic racism is an ongoing issue in America, but I think, besides that, I think it was obviously dealing with this moment of what someone like Rorschach from the original says about our time now with QAnon and all of that. I mean, it was really talking about how we have these secret groups and, the rise of, white supremacist groups and militia groups and all that sort of stuff. And then in the 6, 7, 8, what is it, time, 8 months since it's come out now, policing is, and obviously the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I mean, I will say, the reason why Watchmen, the comic, the graphic novel, has stayed like the best-selling U.S. book of all times is because it has many, many levels. And obviously it wasn't meant to talk about America's role with race, but it was meant to talk about our relationship to authority and to how we deal with that, how we deal with identity, with masks, and with vigilantism, and it had a lot to do with that, with the role of authority. Obviously, the Cold War was a huge thing when it came out, but I do appreciate that some of those themes were able to be translated into this in a way that gives it that continuity also. I mean, it's very different from what obviously anything Alan Moore had to do, and I'm sure he had some salty words, as he does, for it.
He wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to Alan Moore several times over the years. I've actually met Alan Moore at his one American Comic-Con back in the day, but and he's a lovely guy. He's amazing. But when you ask him those questions that he doesn't like, he blows up. It's you prod the bear comes back. And I mean, I wish he could appreciate,
which is ridiculous.
Show.
But anyway, I love how that's ridiculous to blow up over a question.
Yeah, it is. Please. But I mean, I wish Alan was at a place where he could actually appreciate this TV show, but it's very unlikely.
You said something, Heidi, that actually, so you were saying like tackling identity, kind of with the mask in mind. But what I really liked about this show in particular, and Angela Abar, is that she's battling like multiple identities the entire series, right? So like not knowing, like once her parents pass away and she is in Vietnam trying to figure out her identity and her place there, her like even as a new mom, like I don't think that we often get to see Black families adopt children, and so obviously like their circumstances are a little bit different because those kids, their parents passed away during the White Night. And she felt an obligation because, that was her partner to take on that. But she never actually expected to have kids. Like, I think she actually says that at one point in the show. That wasn't a part of the trajectory of the life that she envisioned for herself. But so she's like stepping into an identity as a new mom to kids who are fairly old, right? Like, I mean, like they're old enough to kind of sustain themselves, and they're also old enough to remember their parents. So it's like, it's one of those things. And then she's the identity with being Sister Night and kind of keeping that from those closest to her. And then obviously like meeting her ancestor, which she never thought she would actually have the opportunity to do when she moved back to Tulsa. So that's actually one of my favorite things about the show, is how like Damon really like wove in so many different pieces of Angela Abar into the storyline that all kind of seamlessly connect. And everyone has a connection, whether they realize it or not. And I was like, I love that. So,
Yeah, it's great. It really is. And like what was interesting, this alternate timeline you find, and you slowly it just seeps in. Like Damon was like, okay, Watchmen, the comic is the Bible we're using, but this isn't an adaptation of it. It's a continuation. They didn't even want to call it a sequel for a while. They finally did. But yeah, like Vietnam after winning the war is a state. She was born in the state of Vietnam.
So
Yeah.
cool.
Became a United States of America. It was a state, and that's where Angela was born and raised, and then eventually moved over to the actual, to the continental United States. So I thought that was really interesting, which also kind of makes sense with the U.S. with how we like to conquer and bring people just like England, just like that. Yeah.
Just to make it relevant to this very moment in time, they've been talking about Joe Biden's VP choices, and Tammy Duckworth was born in Thailand, and they're saying like they were afraid that if they picked her, that there would be some judge who might say she wasn't eligible to be vice president because of this. And, just that the whole idea of, obviously the Vietnam War was a subtext of the original as well. And then, the making it, inclusive to America like that is such a radical idea and such a wonderful idea, really.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast with Damon, and it was interesting because he was saying during his time on Lost, he had a lot of experience interacting with
Hawaiians,
native Hawaiians, and they're like, well, you guys just kind of took us over, and there's there's still a lot of resentment, to Native Islanders in Hawaii, and I think it was kind of great that he could take that experience and that knowledge and how more people should be aware of that, and kind of modify it to the Vietnamese outlook.
Yeah, I think you're listening to the official Watchmen podcast, right, John? Yeah, There's 3 of them. If you haven't listened to them, they're great. There's 3 of them with Damon, and oh my God, I forgot the host, but he's like the showrunner on Chernobyl.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. So it's really great to have like this other showrunner interviewing this other showrunner and just talking about the whole series. And it's 3 episodes, so each episode covers
Craig Mazin.
Craig,
is his
there you
name.
go.
I'm a big love Chernobyl. Oh my God.
So I would highly recommend listening to it because they break down 3 episodes per podcast. There's only 3 podcast episodes, but John and I both listen to it. It's awesome to hear. Like I always love those sort of behind the scenes, hearing the creators talk about their own work. One of my favorite things was during Battlestar Galactica, Ron Moore would have these writers' rooms. He would just release podcasts of them in the writers' room coming up with ideas. You can hear ideas that almost made it, but didn't, and then you hear why they didn't. And it's like, oh, that's interesting.
I find that part of the I love that part of the process too. When you talk to writers, editors, showrunners about things, I when I do an interview, I don't know how you guys. So I mean, this is but mine's
all fluff.
I know you guys. I know Jimmy has got his own. I always ask, what was one of the biggest problems you had to solve on this, right? And then you get the best answers because it goes into the process, and I mean, it's super. I read a bunch of interviews with Lindelof, and one of the things he said is that I'm just talking about the first episode. I have one kvetch about the show, and which is related to this, and that they took everything. They left nothing on the floor for a sequel. They said, we're going to put every single idea we have into this show, and everything will be used. And I think in some ways, like I think every episode has its own kind of theme and focus and revelation. And I mean, I think at the first one, you get the idea that's going to be about one thing, and there's a lot of talk about the police force and how they use that, and her job as a cop. And I think some of those elements, don't show, like you think, oh, it's going to be about this, and then it isn't about that. No, I mean, that's fine. I think they probably did that on purpose as well, just trying to, overstuff in their 9-panel format, of information.
There is, though, one of my favorite episodes is, I think it's 5, but it's like the Looking Glass backstory.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think that they start to incorporate like more of different types of themes. So you get to see the reason why he is the way he is. So he has like a lot of trauma that happened on November 2nd. Like, you know, when the giant squid killed all those people and he emerges as the only one who's still alive in a sea of dead bodies, like that's wildly traumatic. And how that kind of shaped who he's become, why he chooses the looking glass mask to begin with, why he even uses that name. Like, I mean, there's so many things, and like how he unpacks trauma with his ex-wife, and then the group that he has and that he creates to try to help people, but really he's struggling with so much anxiety that he can't even sleep at night without like an alarm, a very loud alarm also, which I'm like, this sounds like a war bomb type alarm system. That he can't even sleep without that because he has so much anxiety around seeing so much death constantly. And so like his storyline is one of my favorites because I mean, like eventually they tie into it and we get to some of the racism and like white supremacy, but it's more so about like humanizing him because you really don't know very much about him, you know, those first 4 episodes. You think he's a weird guy, but then you realize like actually he's just someone who has not really gotten a handle on all of the trauma in his life. And he has a lot of PTSD, like a lot.
Yeah, you think he's weird, but he's also like you feel. I feel like he was probably the purest of the like the cop characters, where he's like he really believes in his mission and what he wants to do, and then you find out why.
Yeah, that's true. He is kind of the purest on the force, and probably why Angela can trust him the most. I mean, like honestly, because she can see that intent behind it.
Yeah. And let's talk about this incredible cast. Like we talked about Regina King, obviously, but my God, this cast alone, Jesus! Like we had Regina King, the astounding Regina King. We get Louis Gossett Jr. Coming back, her grandfather, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who plays double duty, as we find out later on in the episode. Which is a very interesting thing Damon said about him, where at first they didn't want to tell him that he was also Dr. Manhattan, but like, we have to, or he may play Cal different, you know, like, so they obviously had to tell him. I mean, Jeremy Irons, you know, like his whole, he seemed like he was in a completely different show until it all, like Kay was saying, all ties together.
Yeah, and then Tim Blake Nelson, you know, I love that guy.
The incredible Hong Chow as Lady True. Oh, God, I loved her. She's Smart.
So vicious. I love it.
Yeah.
Jean Smart.
So lovely.
Yeah. Jean Smart was incredible.
Oh my God. Frances Fisher, who plays, who was the wife.
Don Johnson in the first, his kind of like, cameo in the first episode, which is a great. I mean, I did love how, the first episode is just, the great line from Oklahoma. Ties in Black Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's in there a lot.
I love it. Tying into obviously to Tulsa, Don Johnson. I mean, a lot of times people are cast who bring that whole, their whole career with them, and that was great casting in that way also.
And Jean Smart too.
Jean Smart, absolutely. And I mean,
she's incredible. Oh my God.
And I mean, I have to say, the original Watchmen, Alan Moore is just not known for his great female characters. And unfortunately, although he kind of Promethea, if you can read it, do a little ayahuasca and maybe it'll make sense. But I think just the reimagining of Silk Spectre as the Jean Smart character is just so validating, and like giving her due and making her this. I mean, Jean Smart is. I loved her in everything. I mean, Fargo. Remember how good she's great at everything. But just
you can read the phone book.
Yeah, she just comes and brings it to the role, and obviously, Regina King to have this role, and which like you were saying, Kay. I mean, we all know so many times the players who are put into the white hero's journey are just there to fill a role, to fill a slot, and not to be these rounded characters, to be these fully grown,
This was her journey.
It was her.
Yeah.
And even when they did, I actually do, I don't know. I kind of don't. Well, it depends on the show, I'll say. But this love triangle situation that like ended up occurring that you really didn't know until the end, but there were like little hints along the way. I still felt like this is one of the few times where I watched TV and I wasn't mad at this love triangle because it was just it was just so different. Like, you know, the entire time she's like, I know you, like you're familiar to me. And she can't really put her finger on why, but you know, she's like, oh, well, you know, like you and Angela have this great relationship, but there is something about you that I feel like I've known you for a lifetime. Like, you know, maybe even I feel like in the first couple of episodes, like when she first meets him, I almost feel like she feels like, I feel like I've loved you before, but she doesn't obviously say that, but it kind of comes across that way. So it's so interesting to me to see the dynamic, even just from that Dr. Manhattan's perspective, like he's lived 1,000 lives, like essentially. I mean, that's what you feel like when you have Dr. Manhattan. He's lived 1,000 lives, but he's chosen to live this one, you know, in this time period with Angela. But here is kind of Silk Spectre in the background who is still grieving the loss of the love that she had and thinking that, you know, oh, okay, you know, he just abandoned me and he just left me. So it's so interesting, like even those little teasers and hints along the way, because I mean, obviously, like this is a drama, it's a superhero show, it's about a lot of things, but I think love is still a central theme even within, because even the fact that Angela and Cal get the opportunity to love, you know, like kind of in the midst of all of this craziness, they kind of make that choice. It's still something that we don't really get to see, especially when it comes to Black families on TV. So,
yeah, there's that great scene in Vietnam when he first approaches her, and as Craig, the Chernobyl showrunner, kept saying Dr. Calhat, which I thought was great. It's you know, and he talks about love a lot. Like, no, I always loved you. But what do you mean? And the whole paradox of time and love. Yes. And you find out later when he falls in love, which makes it retroactive, which makes your head spin. You're like, wait, how? You know, but it totally makes sense. You're like, oh, I see what he means there. But God, Yahya played that so incredible because once Damon realized he had to tell him, no, you're also the doc. He had to pull back his performance because else he might have played Cal totally different had he not known until later. And he had to play this sort of subtle, almost boring, you know, character where he's like, I'm just talking this way to you, and this is logical to me. This is what I do. But there was a reason for that, as we found. And then when he became, you know, more Cal, his character developed fuller and fuller. But man, just incredible performances all around. Even the small ones, like Paula Malcolmson shows up out of nowhere. I'm like, Paula Malcolmson! Oh my God, the one that fools Tim Blake Nelson's character. She needs to be in more of this. She's incredible. But the one that didn't show up that I was hoping was going to make their cameo was Robert Redford himself.
Right.
We know he was reached out to, but do we know, did he ever, and the last I read that he never answered, or did he ever answer?
I think they did. Are you sure they reached out? Oh, they did reach out.
Yeah, Lindelof like, yeah, I sent him a message or through people or personally.
Yeah, but he had just the timing. The timing was just wrong for Robert Redford because he had just announced that he
semi-retired.
Yeah, he had, well, not semi. I think he was pretty firm on I'm done with acting.
But he retired and then he did a Marvel movie right after that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
No. This was It was more that was the Winter Soldier. Yeah, no, he was more recent. It was more recent than after that because he did that movie All Is Lost. Has anyone ever seen that All Is Lost movie? Oh my God, it's so good. It's like
that's he's
on the boat.
Ship.
Yeah, and it's him. It's like if Gravity was Robert Redford on an actual boat and with no stunt double. Because anyway, I digress. But it's really good and shock and like, oh my God, and I don't know how to swim and it terrifies me. So yeah,
no stunt double.
What's that?
With no stunt double?
Yeah, like he did most because it was super low budget. So it was just like they did most of it was just him. Like, yeah. Like, I mean, they had a stunt double for some of it, you know. Robert Redford is in his 70s. But
like he's like
I was like
but most of it is just him doing stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I think like one of the last, because I mean he did the cameo in Endgame, and I think that was filmed, like that's actually his final film.
Right.
Then he did The Old Man and the Gun, which is actually a really interesting film. Like it is not bad. So that's like the last film that I saw him. He was the lead in The Gun. Yeah.
But anyway, that would have been super cool, but not to be.
Just all these, that's what's so great. It's like even these, like I was mentioning, even these small roles, like Paula Malcolm's had, or whoever, or Frances Fisher, who knew Kate Winslet's mom from Titanic was so mean. But she was great, especially that confrontation scene with Jean Smart, where she just like, I love that she was just like, oh, I guess was I supposed to not tell you that I'm the bad guy? You know, still
like,
figuring out, like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? What's happening? Oops, now I'm gone. You know, but like just these incredible smaller roles. Did these? It was just such a well-rounded cast. So incredible.
So question for you guys now. I think about halfway through, we kind of began to think that Dr. Manhattan was walking amongst us in the cast. But I mean, did you have any clue at first that maybe Cal was Dr. Manhattan?
I had no idea.
I had no clue. Yeah.
I knew from the moment he stepped on the screen. I was like, he's Dr. Manhattan because I'm a genius. So no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very, but I mean, it was pointed out many times that the key art for this showed, Regina King's character as in the blue, like she was in the Dr. Manhattan, halo and everything. It was hiding in plain sight the whole time, exactly. Yeah, she was in Gorilla there.
I had no idea, honestly, like no clue whatsoever. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, it makes sense. I mean, then you go back and you're rewatching it and you're like picking up on things like his very robotic nature. I probably should have picked up on, in the first couple of episodes. And, he's just very direct and very matter of fact, a very Dr. Manhattan kind of character trait.
Very calm.
There is no sarcasm involved. It's literally just the truth. And so probably should have picked up on that because Cal's personality really was like that, especially when it's the pilot, I think, when Don Johnson's character is basically like, you left us at that Black Oklahoma, and Cal's like, what?
Yeah.
And then, he's like, you didn't tell him? And she was like, you hate musicals. He was like, I do. And he's like, oh. Even playing it that way, I probably should have picked up on those hints because, he was just like the perfect husband that she created. Almost, it kind of like, feels like that sometimes if you watch the episodes again.
But I thought it was a fantastic build up until the point where like she bashes him in the head with the hammer, and then you still don't like the episode ends and you just see a glow on her face, and it was like, it's like we're seeing what she's seeing or vice versa. It's like it was just like very rarely nowadays in television do I get to have those like oh shit moments of amazement because like they really got you, and that definitely was one of them where you're just like, oh my god, he's been here all the time.
After the trauma though, you're right, like she's bashing him in the head, you're like, oh my gosh, this took a turn, like what's happening?
He's in the house. Another thing I thought really interesting was, especially dealing with nowadays, is that it really caused a conflict in you, I think, as a viewer, to watch Regina King, who wanted to be a cop since she was a kid, become a cop, which is great. And you follow her hero's journey as this cop. But then you also see the cops be really brutal. At the same time, you see the cops have to wear masks so they can protect themselves, but not protect other people. So it was such a sort of conflict of like, oh, I want to root for them, but also they can be really brutal and cruel at the same time, which obviously, as we see, nowadays, it has been happening forever. So it's such a conflict within, I feel, a lot of viewers, myself included, where I was just like, oh man, this is what a great they put together. And like, I think the character, oh my god, I forgot the actor, he plays the senator, who sort of has that idea of I'm going to combine these two this racist group who has some pretty good ideas, I think, and the cops, who some people like, some people don't like, and make it all one cohesive thing. You're just like, oh, wait a minute. So it sort of created, I think, a lot of conflict in just even the viewers, which I'm sure was obviously on purpose, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because Angela, she has a lot of trust for like a handful of the other cops that she works with. So it's really interesting that, like, actually one of my favorite lines of the whole show is when she tells Looking Glass, like, did you know that he was in the KKK? And he's like, he's a white man in Oklahoma. They're all in the KKK. Like, he basically is like, why would you trust him? Like, why on earth would you trust him?
Yeah.
I thought that that was an interesting concept because she really did trust, you know, she trusted him with everything that she had. She allowed him in her home, which, guys, I don't know if you know, but like, you know, a lot of Black women do not just allow their coworkers into their home. I mean, like, honestly. And so she trusted him. She really felt like he was family. And Looking Glass was like, well, that wasn't smart. Like, kind of in a very matter of fact way. Like, oh, okay, well, yeah.
It's like a vampire. Don't invite a white man into your home. We should all know that.
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah,
You
but
know?
you know, it's Tim Blake Nelson. I mean,
Yeah.
we would all trust him in our home. I mean, come on, you know.
Well, I meant Don Johnson.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
Don
Don
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Family,
yeah.
but-
I wouldn't let Don Johnson into my home. No way. No
Not
way.
Not even during, especially not during those Miami Vice days. No
Yeah.
way. Come on. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was really great for sure.
So yeah, okay. I mean, I think after the first episode came and really just rocked all our socks, I think the one that had the most impact was the revelation about Hooded Justice.
Oh,
That
yes.
episode was another, and I mean, again, I think part of the power of it came from, you know, subverting the original. And I think, you know, like the great irony of Alan Moore's entire career is that he's made his greatest hits from taking other people's ideas and twisting them. And then he hates it when people do it to his ideas. So there is this super incredible irony that only, you know, another writer could come up with in his whole career. But, you know, obviously Watchmen famously was going to be a reboot of the Charlton characters. So
which would have included Blue Beetle,
which would have been Blue Beetle, and every character in the Watchmen has an analog in the Charlton characters. But then at the last minute, the deal didn't go through, so he's like, "Oh, I'll make my own characters." And obviously, but you know, again, playing on the tropes of, you know, of these superheroes that we know so well, and it's like, you know, the monologuing villain at the end is like, you know, I did it 30 minutes ago, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just one time.
Which
that's where
everyone copied for many, many years and still do. Yeah.
Right, and still do. But so then when they're looking at, you know, now the Watchmen graphic novel is the source material, and in reinventing it, you know, the idea of Hooded Justice, this vigilante character having been Black the whole time,
which is not what he revealed at all in the comic at all.
No,
we don't know. Everyone assumes he's white, of course. Yeah.
Right. It's a very mysterious character. So it's that kind of, you know, I'll just say shocking, but it's, you know, reinvention. It's like taking that idea and just, you know, giving it the spin that is, you know, that resonates. It's such a brilliant spin. And of course, the execution of the story is incredible as well. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was, I mean, I feel like that was probably the second best aha moment for me. I mean, I think the first one is still the Dr. Manhattan. I really did not know. And then the second would be that, like, he was indeed Hooded Justice, and it was just everyone thought he was white because he was painting himself in that light. And even the fact that, like, it was a little bit of his wife's idea for him, you know, like, at first she was really apprehensive from him being a vigilante altogether, but then kind of putting these additional thoughts in his mind on, well, if you're going to do it, then maybe you should do it this way. Like, you know? So, yeah, I mean.
I thought, go ahead, John, sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, with the lineage from Hooded Justice to Sister Night, it's like also there's the idea of like passed down trauma in a sense. Because if you notice, it's like he had to wear a white mask. She has a black mask over her face. She's got a hood. She's got rosaries.
She puts even darker makeup on herself.
Yeah, she has like rosaries and like chains and stuff, just kind of how he had a noose and everything. So those ideas were really beautiful, just like of shared trauma with, you know, from different generations. But I also think it's great, and I don't know if you guys were going to talk about this, but when he's a little kid during Tulsa.
Riots,
he's watching a Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
And Bass Reeves is who the Lone Ranger is based off of. So it's like, wow, taking an iconic, black figure and making them white, So
which they address, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's who he wanted to be. It's like he was watching that film in his mind even before he really got the type of exposure to racism I think that he did like on that day with the riots. He still kind of, it's almost like he still had already decided, well, I want to be Bass Reeves when I grow up. Like this is who I admire. This is who I look up to. But it's interesting, John, that you said about the shared trauma, because there is, and I only know this because I just did the rewatch, but in the PTSD episode, when we're talking about Looking Glass, when he's in the, when they're in the kind of AA type meeting for trauma, one of the characters actually says that. He says he feels like he actually took on his mother's trauma from the November 2nd episode.
Yes. Yeah, so I remember that, yeah.
Like she was carrying it in her womb and it birthed like physically in him.
Yeah, there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is. It's like a psychological sort of name.
But yeah. And he was saying that. He was saying, I think that, people don't talk enough about how like I'm carrying the trauma of my ancestors every day.
Yeah. To John's point also about the like you said about the whitewashing thing, basically like, from Bass Reeves to Lone Ranger, they do that in this show as well, which they kind of do also contributing to the comic. The comic had sort of a comic within the comic. This has a story within a story with the, we see it in like, I think 3 episodes, the American Hero story, where we see Cheyenne Jackson playing Hooded Justice, a white person playing it, because that's what the public perceived him as, the white person. So once again, you see Elvis Presley taking over, you see a white person taking over the role of a black person, because it was part of that whole mythos, and like couldn't possibly be a black person being the hero. And of course, Agent Petey had plenty to say about that. He thought that what a great character, Agent Petey. And if you didn't know, if you haven't do a deep dive, HBO released this great thing called Peteypedia.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's really great. It's a deep dive. So it's basically like almost like Alan Moore's Hidden Crypt Notes, but they're Lindelof's Hidden Crypt Notes in the writing team. And it's this great, there's all these fake documents that Agent Petey put, because he was a history fan of all these superheroes. And there's a great thing about Rorschach. There's a great thing about Laurie Blake's character. And his character hates this documentary series, American Hero, because he feels it's unfactual. It's not based on the real facts like that.
Yeah, it was kind of like this fan. He's a fanboy. He's a fanboy for the original heroes who exist in this world, and he's like the continuity.
Not just a fanboy. He becomes one himself because he is Lube Man.
Right.
We all know that, right? He's Lube Man, the guy that Regina King sees and starts chasing. Then he lubes himself up and slides under the sewer. That's Agent Petey.
Yeah, and I think like there was some loose ends, which obviously Lindelof's previous career, most best known thing with Lost was that there was all these things that didn't pay off, and I feel like the Lube Man, as I was like, but who's Lube Man? Because that was a little bit of a red herring, Yeah. But I think maybe even that was a nod to the idea of loose ends. It's like the answer is
because he's loose.
Yeah.
He just slips through things.
Yeah, but I mean, Lost was really the first TV show where the online fandom. Well, X-Files was the first one, but Lost brought it into another level. Like there was all these blogs and early podcasts
theories,
talking about theories, and there was the after every episode, there would be the Hughes and Lindelof would do a podcast about it. So it was like where all this extra media came in. I think it was, really great that they did the Peteypedia, like they did this, extra site. First it plays into the whole ARG element of it, but also in the olden days of the internet, again, my age is showing, but back in the early days, the GeoCity days.
Just about to say GeoCities.
Right, but it's true. Like people would do these fan sites for things that would be really, really interesting. They do the index or the guide to the characters. They do all the things that we look to Peteypedia for now.
Mhm.
And so I liked that the Peteypedia was kind of a, it's very evocative. It really plays to so many of these themes. It plays to the original story within a story of the comic. It plays into the secret knowledge. It plays into, fans talking about things on the internet.
Well, like you said, it does create a sort of a mystery because at the end, Petey is missing, presumed missing. We're not sure where he is, like what he's doing. And there's even the last intro of Peteypedia is something about like, we have fired Agent Petey for his insubordination over, like looking into these heroes. We told him to stop these vigilante things. So we don't know where he is unless he's just continuing to be Loop Man. So,
I definitely am going to read it now because I didn't know about it until just this moment. So I'm definitely.
You're
there's a lot.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Yeah.
Hours of great content. There's a whole great thing about Lady True I want to get into. They talk about.
Well, I thought also the stuff about Laurie's character in the Peteypedia is really fantastic. Like, in the Peteypedia it talks about how like she and oh my God,
comedian.
Well, she turned into comedian. She became comedian, and she donned the comedian's. She officially took his last name, as Blake. And I don't remember if they talk about like the giant vibrator that she's given was given to by Night Owl as like a screw you finally. And I don't know if they named it Excalibur in the show.
I don't think they did.
But in the Peteypedia, it's referred to as Excalibur.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Night Owl is the one character that we don't see, the one Watchmen who we don't know what happened to him. So
Well, Lindelof
in the
debated on it. Yeah, he talked about using him in it, but then decided not to.
But in the Peteypedia, it mentions that he was arrested. He and Laurie were arrested. He stayed in jail, and she took a plea bargain, as it were, to become a superhero hunter now.
Yeah, and he was offered the same deal, but he was like, "Nope, I'm staying in jail."
Yeah.
So, possible.
But we do
possible
see the owl
season
ship
2 right there.
Yeah, we do see the owl ship though.
So let's talk. Let's talk about the new. Obviously the two Ozymandias.
Yes.
Like we have the original Ozymandias as with Jeremy Irons.
Oh my God,
brilliant casting, and then we have the new Ozymandias, Lady True.
Well, that's what I think. Where you talked about with Dr. Did you know Cal was? I feel like I remember seeing. I'm like oh, he's Ozymandias. Like right away.
I mean, that wasn't even a secret. I mean, in the first episode, it was super obvious that it was Ozymandias, just because it was Jeremy Irons. It was
Yeah. But it did feel like a separate show at first until like Kay said, it all eventually comes together. But just brilliant in the way he played it. It's, I think, how they decided to write it, because they didn't originally, I think, wanted to make it as comedic. But the way Jeremy played it, they were like, wait a minute, we could do something with this. And it was genius. And it was so great. And he, of course, played it so great and just was such a dick and so good at it.
That whole storyline where, we finally figure out he's on the moon, and
Jupiter's moon, yes,
Jupiter's moons, right? Yeah. But with all this creepy, gross things, it was like, but
clones,
you knew, with the clones and all of that, and the violet, but I think by again, as a Lindelof denier, I am, or suspicion. I have my suspicions, but I after the first episode being so great, I was just like, this is gonna be good. I felt very like you knew that was gonna have this payoff.
Oh yeah.
And I think like the Squidfall. Squidfall is something that was in the first episode that you thought might come back as it affected the characters, but they didn't. And they made that "What to Do If There's a Squidfall" poster. Did any of you guys get that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I totally downloaded that, and I had it up in my office. Just because,
because you never know.
You never know. But obviously the revelation of what what Ozymandias was doing with this, and then the payoff at the end was like a great callback to all of his schemes. Yeah, it really worked. Good job, Damon.
Yeah. just brilliant. Jeremy Irons was so good. And then when you get then when Lady True is introduced, you're like, well, she's really interesting, and she seems similar to him, and you find out why, because she's his daughter.
Yes.
And Hong Chow was brilliant as Lady. I loved her so much. She was so great. She played that almost sociopathic like niceness, like. She's gonna kill you, but she's gonna offer you tea as well.
Right.
It's like, or a sandwich. But it's just like she was so great. And in Pedia, there's a really great little breakdown of her character, where they talk about like where because she I think she offered the married couple a baby that she cloned for them. And did you get the name of the wife? Her name was Lois Clark.
Oh, nice.
Lois Clark,
Nice.
Yet another Superman reference. And so she apparently sent HDTVs to every resident in the surrounding area as an apology for building this giant clock, taking up their time. And then in her memoir, her mother, Bian, reveals that she let True pick her own name at the age of 5. And she was inspired by Vietnamese history. The True of lore, a 3rd century freedom fighter, was part Joan of Arc, part Minuteman, as in like British, oppressive British, not like the superheroes. She was known for her striking appearance, a no compromise, no surrender personality, and bold statements like, I only want to ride the wind and walk the waves. I want to slay the big whales of the Eastern Sea. I want to clean up frontiers and save the people from drowning. Why should I imitate others and bow my head? Why should I stoop over and be a slave? So at 5 years old, she decided to name herself True after this.
It's a great.
After this great freedom's hero. So yeah, I think it's so great. She played it so well.
Lady True as a 5-year-old.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who wouldn't want to be, the freedom fighting, badass, folk hero of your country? Yeah, she said.
What a great origin too. Like her mom just literally takes a sperm and injects herself with it.
That was so awesome.
So
And again, it's a great reinvention. It's a great reinvention of the this.
Oh, I was gonna say, yes, totally. But also, the fact that she freezes Ozymandias and we see him in her timeline, multiple times, and we just think it's a statue.
Again, right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's actually him. He's been here for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible.
That's amazing.
So I guess we have 2 questions that have to be answered. And the first question is the ending.
Not on the first date. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
yes, the ending is, it seems like a cliffhanger where we see Angela about to step onto the water. We don't know if she's got her Dr. Manhattan powers or not. Now, Damon Lindelof says it's not really a cliffhanger, and
it's the end of the story.
It's just the end of the story. And I mean, I think we all in our minds, I'm pretty sure the whole panel here pictures her stepping on that water and walking on the water, right? Is there any question that doesn't happen?
Yeah, no.
I mean, it does. Yes, it does happen.
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, is the sky blue? Yes. Does it happen? Yes.
Will she be blue? Yes.
I was worried about salmonella. Like maybe she could have cooked the egg. But
the egg should have been cooked.
Besides that, once she gets the powers, she can heal herself. It's fine.
So, do you think that was a good ending, though? Do you think like having this ambiguous?
I think it was a perfect. I think like everybody, I probably would have all think, what the oh no, wait, is there more? Is there? And then as I started, I'm like, oh no, that's perfect. That's the way to end it. And then hearing the podcast that Damon did and reading the articles where he's like, no, that's my story. I have no more to tell. And he's left it open because if I wake up tomorrow with another idea, great. But as of now, I wanted to tell a concise, compact story, and that's the ending of my story. And I'm like, that makes absolute sense to me. It was perfect. Loved it.
Again, I would say an experienced showrunner. Like, you get to the point where you're like, this is the ending. That's it. The end.
And also, I definitely think that she, because I definitely think that she becomes Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because did you guys know about her last name? Abar?
Yeah, Abar, the Black Superman.
Yeah, so it's actually from a blaxploitation film called the first Black Superman. Abar.
Yeah, Abar, the first Black. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So she's definitely...
No, I mean, I think Lindelof has said, explicitly. I mean, he doesn't. He comes as close as you can come to saying, without coming out and saying it, that obviously he says it's not a cliffhanger when she's, that she's going to walk on the water. She does have met Dr. Manhattan's powers. So, I think it was just, I don't know. It's like a frisson of storytelling. I don't know. It feels even more satisfying in a way
I agree.
that where you complete it. It kind of goes to your own, like Scott McCloud's theory about comics itself, where, when you in your mind do the storytelling, it's more it's more meaningful to you. So I think the fact that in our own minds, we all complete that step is that effect.
Well, like what Kay was saying earlier with like Lost and other shows, that, it's very rare we get an Indian people and even this Indian people weren't content with it. They're like, I want another, but it's like, and by no means am I comparing this show saying it's anywhere on the level of Watchmen, but I was a big Buffy and Angel fan. And I think Angel had one of the most perfect endings of it. If you don't know, where it's like literally the 5 characters have been in this brutal battle with evil, and they meet up in the alley at the end, one of them practically dying, and they face, because the portal of hell's been open, and they face these demons and dragons and everything, and there's hundreds of them, 5 of them about to take them on. And it literally ends with them talking about like, okay, we're going to fight them now. And Angel having a sword going, let's go to work. And I'm like, that was great. Because now you're guessing what, they're going to fight these demons about. You're like, yes. Again, not the same level of writing, but still quite, I thought that's the idea of like, I like that type of ending. Yes, you want to see more. If somebody came with an idea, and I'm pretty sure Lindelof said he's done with it. He could pass it off to someone else.
Well, I mean,
if that was another idea.
That was my next question. He said pretty much he's done. Now HBO is desperate to do more, obviously, because
they're calling it a mini series or anthology in that series now. So they're open for more. Yes.
Yeah. So it's open for more. Should there be more? Could there be more?
Again, like he said, it's a solid story by itself. But if someone else comes with another story, I'm going to check it out. There might be more to it. If they don't do a direct sequel, if they do like an adjacent story, something like make it like even Lindelof said he saw certain elements of it, the American Hero story within the story as like an American Horror Story thing. He wanted to use that same element, so something like that where you can do like a different. Maybe a same character or two and using it off in something else, or just something completely different within that world. I'm open to it. I'm going to let this be its own solid story.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with you, Jimmy. Like for me, I've said it before, I think this was a perfect season of television. And so it stands alone for me. Like I actually feel very fulfilled. Like I don't need anything more from that. But he said the only way, and I don't know that he would be done. I kind of feel like if there were to be like a second iteration, I know that he said he would want there to be a Black showrunner, but I kind of feel like he would potentially be an EP on it, and maybe kind of drop
consultant
some in their ear. Right, exactly. And I'm not opposed to there being like another story somehow, some way. And it doesn't have to necessarily involve Regina King, because I also am not sure if anyone has asked her if she'd be interested in playing Angela again. But I would be interested to see like something happen. Maybe, like Lady True's daughter.
Yes, Beyond.
Like a focus of another one. That would be awesome. Like something like
that. I think he said, or I think they said right after everybody, even Regina was pretty keen to like, let's do more. I think if it was Tim Blake Nelson, I was like, dude, you got to do another one. What are you talking about? But then he's like, no, this is my story. But again, open to it. But if not, it's perfect the way it is, I think.
John, where do you weigh in?
It's tough. I mean, Dr. Manhattan even says nothing ever ends. So
Nope. IP is ever wasted. All right. Now, so I'm big on, done and out. It's like I do like the fact that this was so perfect and they threw it all. They left nothing in the writer's room and put it all out there. And I agree. It's a pretty perfect TV series. It's a pretty perfect piece of work. And so, and I'm like, again, author's intent, like, no, there shall be no more Watchmen. But now Tom King is writing. Tom King is writing a Rorschach miniseries for DC, and Tom King obviously very open about his ex-CIA past and specializes in writing books about traumatized white men with PTSD. So is it perfect casting? Yes. Is it is this the one thing that might be super interesting? Yeah, kind of. So look. I love Fargo is another really perfect TV show. And, each season is so good. And so, Noah Hawley is so great, although I didn't really get his superhero show. That one.
Oh, I love Legion.
Yeah. Well, we should do an episode on Legion because that might be a good one. But, anyway, I mean, I love the fact that sometimes it's just time to move on from these characters. And I mean, but do we feel like maybe 30 years from now, someone might revisit the HBO Watchmen characters and do some kind of reinvention of
less
them?
Than 30 years. Yeah, yes. I think it'll be less than 30 years it'll happen with the way IPs go.
Yeah,
Then maybe it's the kids who kind of rise up because, like, there are 3 children in the A-Bar Manhattan household who may get something going there. Lady True's daughter. And
for sure.
No, that said, would I watch a TV show with Regina King as Dr. Manhattan? Hell yeah! I mean, I would totally. Yeah. If they did it like some kind of like 70s cop show, I would watch this TV show. It would be amazing. Yeah. So I mean, I'm denying myself the enjoyment, obviously, of this, but sometimes it's best to move on. Yeah. So what else? I mean, I feel like
I have a couple other things.
Yeah. What are
another thing I mentioned was the whole idea of the 7th Cavalry wearing the Rorschach masks, and they talk about it in Peteypedia. They talk about it as well, where it's like, and even Lindelof said, like, they misinterpret yet another appropriation, like some white supremacists do often. They'll take something and appropriate it to mean what they want to mean. Like
Pepe the Frog.
Exactly. There you go. So Rorschach, Lindelof, and even like in the Rorschach was not racist. He was not. Sometimes people were like, "Oh, was he? Was he not?" He was like, in the research and the PDP, like, no, he was not a racist person. He would be very upset if he saw that his mask was appropriated by these, crazy white supremacists, things like that. But I thought it was an interesting choice for them to take the Rorschach mask, that was a hero mask, to make it this evil thing, because it did kind of work as that's like, oh my God, that's something I was terrified of, and now it's even more terrifying because it's these crazy white supremacists. So yeah.
Well, not of that, but like stealing the identity of a quote unquote hero.
Yeah.
For viewers who are like, oh, Rorschach, because he's one of the most the iconic cosplays of every Comic-Con and everything like that. So to subvert that character and he might not be as good as you think he is interesting.
But the ending cliffhanger of the comic is with Rorschach's journal. And the idea is, is that Ozymandias has pulled this con, on the world of like, how do we get, and again, the original was about, came out during a Cold War where duck and cover, we're going to be killed when Ronald Reagan and, the Soviet Union go to war and a nuclear holocaust. So, let's bring on the extraterrestrial threat to bring us all together. And the idea at the end is that they're going to make Rorschach's journal public. And when the public learns that this was all a con, then we'll kill each other again. And, nowadays with QAnon and all of this, I mean, truth is such as, nowadays, publish Rorschach's journal? Who cares? I mean, the president of the United States just said he's trying to kill the post office yesterday. Yeah. And we're all kind of like, man, this is horrible. What are we going to do about it? Because we can't do anything about killing the post office. Right. So I mean, the subversion of truth with Rorschach, obviously the Rorschach test is, supposed to be a psychological test to tell what your innermost feelings are. Anyway, there's a lot of layers to it. And I mean, I think the show Well, I mean, when it came out, we were in the present moment, you know? I mean, it wasn't like Black Lives Matter didn't already exist, or police brutality didn't already exist, or we didn't live in a country where systemic racism is an everyday thing. I feel like the show did, like, we didn't know we were going to have COVID-19 and go into quarantine and be living in this world where wearing a mask is a political statement somehow. Right? So,
Yeah.
but I feel like it kind of primed the pump a little bit, you know? I mean, I think when Trump did his comeback rally in Tulsa, I think the fact that because we'd seen Watchmen, more people were aware of the historical meaning of that. I think that I think that created
Also, the fact
more
he was going to
awareness.
do it on Juneteenth,
Yes,
originally,
right.
it was like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, I feel like we are almost living in an alternate reality at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like 2020 is an alternate reality in some ways, but in some ways it's exactly what we've experienced. And I mean, like, you know, like Heidi just said, I mean, obviously, like, this country is literally built on the backs of systemic racism. So, I mean, there's everything, every single thing, you know, kind of stems from systemic racism in this country. And so this body of work, I feel like the show really touches on how, like, it infiltrates into anything, any and every single aspects of things. And so, not to pivot completely, but I will say, when you guys watch Lovecraft Country, it's very similar in that space in terms of being built on systemic racism and how it just has done a whole lot of things. It's a vastly different show, so I will say that. Obviously, it's wildly different. Like, obviously, it's a horror creation, but realistically, the horror is racism. So here we are. I mean,
yeah.
So.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Which is
Which
coming.
Jordan Peele touches upon, of course, in his movies as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's great that you know, these pulp fictions are able to really talk about even greater truths. I mean, that's, you know, that's what entertainment is for. It's to really make us be better people, I think, by learning about these things and by thinking about this stuff. So
yes, and where have we all turned to during the pandemic? Entertainment. So let's support the arts and actors like Jon, and let's support the arts and keep it going, because they're what is keeping us going.
Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the Beats YouTube channel. I always forget to say that. Don't forget to subscribe. So, you know, so the Beats and this
for that.
And this podcast, can continue, because I think we're all going to be sitting here for a little while longer.
Maybe tell people, like, what are you guys watching then? Like, as we end, what else are you watching to help with the social distancing, quarantining of it all?
Well, I started a list, because I watch way too much TV as it is, just not just for the podcast, but just in general. I love it. I'm a TV junkie, you know, like that. But I watch so much TV. It's insane. I mean, so I've gotten through all of Netflix, where they're like, you need to take a break, buddy. Instead of like, are you still watching? They're like, you need to stop watching.
Yeah, I'm like, Jimmy, like, you watched every episode of, like, you know, the most obscure crap.
And I've also become, besides being a giant Anglophile, I watch a lot of British TV. I've become a very big Koreaphile. I watch so much Korean, like, TV on YouTube, variety shows, all these amazing, hilarious variety shows I've been watching, and like game shows they have are hilarious and really fun. But yeah, I'm watching anything new that pops out. I'll check out. Obviously, anything on the nerd spectrum, you know, I'm gonna check out. But I mean, I don't even know where to begin of like what I'll be catching up on movies, because I kind of stopped going to the movies as often as I did years ago. So I've been catching up on movies in the past few years that I hadn't seen yet, or certain ones will cross my, you know, radar. I'm like, I just finally saw Jojo Rabbit the other day. Incredible. There's a great new documentary. Well, it's not newish. It's newish on Disney called Howard, about the late great Howard Ashman, the lyricist, and of famous things like Aladdin and Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and things like that. God, what else? There's so much. The new Muppets Now show on Disney I'm really enjoying. It's really funny. It like John can attest. He saw it. Like it really harkens back to sort of the old Muppet Show. My God,
Jimmy watches everything. John, what are you watching?
Everything.
What are you watching?
I really enjoy. I just got through all of it, but I really enjoyed Doom Patrol.
Yes,
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, same.
I enjoyed Doom Patrol. Like superhero wise, like I think the new Stargirl show is really nice.
Yeah,
I
watched it. Just finished it.
It yesterday.
Yeah, yep.
It's like kind of a nice little breath of fresh air in the.
We're going to review that on the
podcast.
I like everyone except for her.
I mean, you get an actual physical robot on set.
Sorry, Brett.
Yeah, exactly. Not the actress at all. It's just I get it. She's a young teenage girl who makes tons of mistakes. And I'm like, girl, we learned last week. We learned. So.
Yeah.
I was disappointed by a couple of things. I was excited for on Netflix. Like Cursed, I was super excited for, and I watched it. I was like, meh. I'm like, yeah, all right. And same thing with the other one, the Warrior Nun. I was stoked for, and then I watched it. I was like, I finally kicked in the last couple episodes, but it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was like, But there's been a lot of great stuff though, and like John was saying, the Doom Patrol was so good, and if we did see Palm Springs, that Andy Samberg comedy on Hulu is really great. It's really fun. The Old Guard with Charlize Theron was awesome. Lots of good stuff for sure.
Kay, what are you watching, Kay?
Sorry, John, I did not mean to go down a Stargirl hole.
Yeah, no worries.
I just finished it yesterday. So Stargirl, I finished. I'm actually watching a series a week, like a full season a week is generally what's happening now at this stage because, where are we going? So Girl, I liked Never Have I Ever. I watched Indian Matchmaking.
I've been hearing about that lately.
Lots of things that's happening in my repertoire. I am about to start Max, which is a British comedy show that just came to Hulu. So I'm going to start that soon. I'm watching like a mix of things. Obviously, I just did the Lovecraft Country interviews. So I've seen the first 5 of those.
Nice.
Cool. As someone who is not a fan of horror just because I'm too scary, I love this show. It's so good. Like I actually not stop watching. It's crazy. And I am watching some episodes of The Boys, which kind of ahead to do those interviews, and I've seen a couple of those.
I just got the screeners. I haven't watched them yet, but I'm looking forward to checking them out.
Same here. I just of course any time spent watching Carl Urban is my hobby, so
I want his career so bad.
Man.
I want to watch Carl Urban so bad. So I, as John and Jimmy know from having done podcasts with me many times, I struggle to watch anything that isn't like real life stuff. So during pandemic, I watched wrestling, but okay, well, we're going to come back. We got to do another wrestling episode because I will say I am really bored of WWE, but AEW is awesome. Yeah. It's so good. That's the one that I really enjoy watching. So I watch wrestling, and then baseball is back, just so everybody in the league can get sick, get COVID, and watching the Mets.
Watch Korean baseball. Then
Gary, Keith, and Ron are now that baseball is back. That is my religion. I just
watch some Korean or Taiwanese baseball.
But they don't have Gary, Keith, and Ron, But I am looking forward to Lovecraft Country, and I am once I get my Hbmx figured out, get it on the goddamn Roku.
I knew you were gonna say that. Everyone, it's Roku.
It's like, hey, AT&T, hey, you just cut Peter ribbons and kill DC Universe. And it's like, you're such a great, well-run company. You can't even get on Roku. And
it's not on Fire Stick either.
On Fire Stick.
Oh. I they're truly, honestly, I actually was on a call last night for it was a WebEx, and one of the executives from HBO Max was on there, and someone asked her, this wasn't even the topic of conversation for this WebEx. The message shared was like, when will this be on Roku? So
and she was like, I've got another call. I gotta go.
We are working on it. She's like, literally, it's our top question.
You're working on it. It's
Just
been 2 months. The country is in quarantine, so we have nothing to freaking do except watch TV. And also, AT&T, you just said everything in your whole company is based on direct-to-consumer, and HBO Max is your biggest priority over everything. So anyway, I rant and rave about this every single time because it is like my entertainment pet peeve. You know what? And speaking of which, one of the reasons I want to get HBO Max, I will give one thing I did watch, is they have the Criterion Collection on there, and I love old movies.
Same.
And right, and so TCM is having Summer Stars, where like one day is Rita Hayworth, and the next
they do that all the time. Yeah, it's great.
Is like these old stars and new stars. They had Goldie Hawn Day, and then they had Charlie Chaplin Day. Now I know
recently
Charlie Chaplin in real life was probably this really pretty awful person. Okay, we got to kind of face up to this. He would not face scrutiny now, but I had never seen City Lights. I had never seen City Lights.
City Lights,
right?
So good.
Okay, which everyone says is one of the all-time greatest movies. And I'm like, it is super rare that something lives up to the hype like this, because everybody's like, oh, the last shot. And I mean, even though I've been reading like the last shot of City Lights, I mean, when I'm crying now. It's like the last shot of City Lights is so incredible. And it's a lot like tying it back, the last shot of Watchmen, because it ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Don't know. Like this, whether this tramp has revealed himself to this girl who had lost her sight. Now she has it back, and now she sees him as he really is, and lower than he's ever been. And will they have a relationship, or will they not? And the debate goes on. We'll never actually have an answer to that question. But oh my God, what an incredible movie! What an incredible.
Did you see Great Dictator?
I didn't see that. But once I get HBO Max, I will. I mean, Charlie Chaplin is, of course, a great filmmaker. So
I got to say about HBO Max, the one thing that many collections they have, somehow I'm a bad Asian. I missed every Studio Ghibli film ever and never saw it. They had the entire collection. So I'm halfway through the entire collection. Out of the 20 films, I've gotten through like 12 of them. And
they also have most of the Godzilla movies too.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So that's what, plus I've been watching all the studio. I got to get back on that Studio Ghibli train and finish them up. But oh my God.
I do have a question, John. Is season 1 of Doom Patrol on HBO Max?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, both seasons. Yeah, both seasons.
So okay, you don't have it either.
No, I do.
Oh, you do have it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm the only one.
I do have it.
I've had HBO forever, so if you had HBO, you automatically got HBO Max. Yeah.
Right.
Tying it back, though, I do want to discuss one last thing about Watchmen. The music. I love the Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, composed the music. That's great. But
it's
the
great.
Licensed music was so good. Like even per episode, not just the actual. I remember a few episodes, they would play I remember Careless Whisper came out. I'm like, oh, George. But then within that episode, 2 more covers appear. There's these great covers, and then there's another episode with a cover of something else of the same song that was played earlier. You're just like, these are incredible covers, but also just incredible uses of the music of Oklahoma the musical itself, and just everything. And they even said how the one episode that was titled something blue, they used songs with the term with the blue and Blue Danube and things like that. It was so obviously well thought out. And the music was so fitting. I mean, it was like there was Kiss in there. It said George Michael. There was, I think, Pat Benatar, and then there was Mozart, and there was the musical. It was such an incredible array of music, and it fit so perfectly per episode.
Well, it like we said, it has over 20 nominations, and I mean a lot of them are, to be fair, pretty obscure technical categories that you will never see on the left. For cinematography and directing, and I mean they did get many women and people of color to direct the episodes. They got a very varied behind the camera. It was listen, it's good. They did good. They did the right thing.
Check it out.
They did the right thing. They did the right thing. So
Sure.
All right. Well, listen, Kay, thanks for joining us for the first time here, but I'm sure you'll be back.
So
yeah.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, of course. And, so we like to go around and reiterate where you could find us on social media. So, John?
Yeah, you can find me on all social media at JonHoche.
Okay.
You can find me on all social media at TheLadyKayB.
Just like Lady True, Lady KB.
Lady KB.
And I'm Jimmy Aquino. It's at Jimmy Aquino, JIMMYAQUINO on Instagram, Twitter, etc. Of course, comicnewsinsider.com for the weekly podcast as well.
And I am Heidi MacDonald. I am Comics Ace, COMIXACE on all social media. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our Beat YouTube channel so we can continue doing this. And, hey, I guess as long as there's COVID-19, we'll keep doing Comic Beat Insider. So
That's right.
much more things to watch. So until next time, thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.